Hello and welcome to Right On with Tom Fallwell. This is our first broadcast and will be the first of many weekly episodes about indie authors and the indie author community. First up, allow me to introduce to you Tracy Sanders and Reader's Review Room.
Hey guys, my name is Tracy Sanders. I'm a multi-genre author of 10 titles in romance, children's, and nonfiction. But before all that, I was, and still am, an avid reader. I'd like to share a review for a book titled Magnolia Secrets by Beth Hale. Lainey is a well-crafted heroine whose secret life rocks a small town and captures the heart of her hero. Her story is compelling and emotional because, sadly, spousal abuse is a real problem in the world. It was riveting to see her grow and become stronger throughout the story and finally begin to feel comfortable in who she was as a woman and a person with a purpose in life other than serving as a punching bag for her controlling husband. The scenes were written in vivid detail, and one could almost feel the burn on Lainey's cheek and taste the salty blood on her lip when she took her punishment, as she often phrased it. This story kept me turning page after page with witty dialogue and plot twists that I never saw coming. It would appeal to readers from many genres, and I highly recommend it. I will definitely be reading more by this author. This review can be found at Reader's Review Room, a site I founded to help authors find their target readers and readers find their next favorite authors. Magnolia Secrets received a gold bookworm, which is the highest rating we offer. If you'd like the chance to have your book listed on our site and receive honest, thoughtful reviews like this one, be sure to check out our Facebook group, Reader's Review Room. And you may email your Amazon buy links to readersreviewroom@gmail.com to have your titles vetted. We'll check out a sample of your writing. If they meet our standards, we'll list them for a small fee. If we decline them, we'll tell you why and offer suggestions for improvement. We're all about building the indie industry stronger than ever, one review at a time.
We have a couple of book readings for you today. First up, The Redoubt by Devorah Fox, followed by The Winter That Follows by L.G. Surgison.
Hello, I am Angela B. Chrysler, and we'll be reading an excerpt from The Redoubt by author and copyright holder Devorah Fox, who has given authorization for this reading. Well, that was a close call, Sir Alan said, firelight making his piercing gaze all the more fierce. Dame Deirdre took a swig of watered wine and shrugged. I had it under control. Nevertheless, it all sounds terrifying, said Lady Joy. Those poor people, driven to living like wild animals in a forest, said Lady Alice. It's enough to give me nightmares. Perhaps we should have another tale. Like a bedtime story for grown-up people, asked Sir Albert. Lady Alice laughed. Well, it does work for children. I wouldn't hold out much hope for a restful night with visions of Dame Deirdre's old deal still on my mind. I would rather try to retire with thoughts of someone living happily ever after, wouldn't you? She looked at the people clustered around the fire. Who has a story ready to tell? I do. All right, let us hear it then, Sir Maxwell. The young knight took a drink and set his cup down. Once upon a time, there was a knight, a man brave and true who wanted nothing more than to serve his king. This is a story about me, said Sir Alan. No, you lout, this is a story about me, said Sir Howell. This knight, he was handsome too, wasn't he? Asked Lady Joy. All knights are handsome. She looked at Dame Deirdre. Well, except for those who are beautiful, of course. Dame Deirdre acknowledged the compliment with a nod. Yes, he was handsome, not big and robust. To be frank, he was somewhat on the skinny side, which was of some concern to him because he wanted to be the best knight in his king's army. What he lacked for in bulk, he tried to make up for in nerve and intelligence. Now, this knight was riding through the woods one winter day with his king. The king was surveying his lands, and the knight, "Does this knight have a name?" asked Lady Joy. Name? Yeah, of course he has a name. It's Ardent. So the king and Sir Ardent were riding along, and Sir Ardent was keeping a sharp eye out for his poachers. It was winter, and thieves were wont to gather kindling and hunt game on the king's land. Everyone knows that is a serious crime against the monarchy. As well, there could be enemy spies or others intending to harm his king. Sir Ardent came to full alert when he noticed something suspicious in the glade up ahead. He straightened his eyes, trying to bring the vision into focus. Light filtered down through the canopy of trees and played on the shadows at their base. The shapes of dark and light changed as the wind moved the tree limbs, and he could not quite make out what he saw. Was there indeed someone there, or was it just a trick of the light? But then he got a good glimpse that he was fairly sure of what he saw. "Stop," he said to the king. "That is, please stop, sire," Sir Maxwell added. Sir Ardent was very polite and respectful. "Do you see someone?" the king asked. "All we can see are leafless trees and fields frosted with snow." Indeed, it was hard to make out anything from the snow on the ground. The sun glinted off that whiteness and created a blinding glare, but Sir Ardent could see him. He kept his voice to a whisper so as to not startle him. "There. Did you see him?" he asked his king. "See whom?" "A unicorn," Sir Ardent replied.
Black River Chronicles, Book 2, The Winter That Follows. A conspicuous lack of goblins. Charlie heaved the barrel up through the trapdoor and lumped it down beside the other two. It was unusually quiet this morning. The Law Temple 9-hour bell had rung long since, and yet there was no noise in the street. He wiped his forehead and hands with his apron and went to the door of the tavern. Charlie was used to goblins. Some of his best customers were goblins. In fairness, he didn't have many customers that weren't goblins, which is what happens if you open a bar called the Startling Toad. Today, however, was suffering from a conspicuous lack of goblins. The sound of no goblins always made Charlie nervous. It usually meant they were up to something. Mind you, goblins were up to something, whether you could hear them or not. But if you couldn't hear them, it meant they were up to something organized. Charlie was still recovering from the chicken rustling plot of 1099. He couldn't live through that again. Screaming militia, chortling goblins, and flying chicken feathers everywhere. And he was still finding grain in places he thought he had cleaned. He tried to rack his brains. What had he heard? One of them had been muttering about the Temple District, he thought, and another couple had mumbled something about the Adventurers Guild. He hoped it was the Temple District. It was already a pile of rubble, and therefore there wasn't much more damage they could really do to it. If it was the Adventurers Guild, then things were not likely to go so well. The combination of a bunch of self-obsessed hero types and a load of piss-head goblin doghands was not something that Charlie wanted to contemplate at this hour of the day. On opening the door, it was much as he feared. The street was empty. There weren't even the usual piles of drunks sleeping off the night before. Not even those crazy bastards, Chelios and Trask, lying in a stinking heap, grinning and twitching in their sleep, and cuddling their explosives. Charlie couldn't remember the last time he'd seen the street empty. There was nothing out there, apart from effluent and seagulls. He was beginning to wonder if he was dreaming, until he caught a whiff of something wafting by, and decided that if his subconscious could manufacture a smell like that, then he didn't want to know about it. He shrugged. There was nothing to be done except his job, so he stumped back into the bar and started wiping tables, wondering to himself if there was really any point. It was then that he noticed it. A scrap of paper, perhaps twice the size of a hand, was pinned to the wall by a rusting dagger. It had clearly been dropped in more than one puddle, and bore the terrifying legend, "Back soon, we's joined the army, love Chelios." Blimey, thought Charlie. I didn't realize the army were that hard up. "Front and centre!" bellowed the captain. "Come on, you bunch of idle scroats!" A small handful of scraggly-looking men jogged up and fell into an uneasy line in front of the captain, and were trying not to meet the captain's rheumy eye even more so than usual. "I said front and centre, or you'll feel my whip!" screamed the captain again, spittle flying as she let a whip crack echo through the air. Nothing. No one else appeared, and the few who were shuffling in front of her stared at their feet with more concentration than they had ever paid their work. The captain rounded on them with the fury like the storm-bound sea. "Where are Chelios and Trask? Slacking? I'll have their hides if they're too drunk to unload." This was met with an uncomfortable silence. "Or are they still in that alehouse? Is that what it is?" The crew dare not breathe. The captain's wrath was bad enough without interrupting her flow. "Well," she demanded, One of you speak to me!" Then she shot out a hand, grabbed the first collar within reach, and yanked. A scrawny man with a fearsome beard found himself nose to nose with the red-faced harpy that was his captain. "Mordecai!" she roared. "Where are the goblins?" The man, Mordecai, looked the captain in the eye, and with the fatal air of one who knows his day cannot get any worse without a sudden invasion of demons, said calmly, "They've gone." "Gone?" screamed the captain. "What do you mean they've gone?" Mordecai had nothing to lose. He wasn't sure he wanted to stay on the crew if the goblins had left anyway. He took a deep breath, and in the slow manner one explains simple things to an infant or an imbecile, said, "They've gone, as in they are no longer here, as in they have left, they have departed and removed themselves to another geographical location. Apparently there's a war on, or there will be." At this point the captain let out one last guttural roar, and hot spittle hit Mordecai in the face just before she threw him to the floor. Lying on the deck, looking up at the sky, Mordecai was cross about one thing. Wherever they had gone, those green bastards could have taken them with them. The muffled explosion was the first thing the guard knew of what was to become known as the Goblin Incident, even though a significant portion of the participants were in fact orcs or trolls. He had been in a lolling dazed state when the blast had occurred. 3 seconds later he was more awake than he had been during the last 3 years of his guarding career. Perhaps the sound of the falling masonry had been the worst thing, or it might have been the raucous cackling and howling that had followed. He had honestly never heard a sound like it. It was enveloping and pervasive. It crept over his spine and into his ears and hair. It was frightening and taunting. It wormed its way into his head and his dreams, and it stayed there. The look on his boss's face whilst he was making his report made a similar impression, resulting in a horrifying tableau that greeted him whenever he closed his eyes to sleep. It took several days to decipher exactly what had happened, by which point it had also become abundantly clear why it had happened. Rumours of a vast greenskin army massing on the borderlands of Aberthy state were spreading like clap through a brothel. And if the more esoteric of the stories were to be believed, there were more blowing in the wind than the foul smell of 1,000 pairs of unwashed feet. If that was indeed the case, then the jailbreak was a very logical move. Clearwater was a well-known Albion jail, well known for 2 things. Firstly, it had started life as an insane asylum, and then sometime during the reign of King Leopold, it had been cleaned out and turned into a prison for vagrants and petty criminals. No one asked too many questions about what had been done with the previous inmates, as the jail slowly began to fill with the more unpleasant elements that got underfoot in Royal Albion. The second thing was that by 1102, the jail was renowned for having a vast population of greenskin inmates, on such a wide array of charges that the senior jail clerk had had to buy a new ledger. In the case of a greenskin uprising, it was like the proverbial gold mine. The guard had, at one point, wondered why no one had thought of that before, but he knew full well what the answer to that question was. The greenskins in Albion, and in fact everywhere else, was so far downtrodden that no one had expected there to be a greenskin uprising. Well, thought the guard as he left his boss's office with his ears burning for the 3rd time in as many days. More fool them. Greary rolled his eyes. Don't worry, they'd said. Eventually everything will be back to normal, they said. His captain had reassured him that his job would return to its previous glorious monotony, and so had his wife. Apparently they were both wrong. At least this lot were heading in the right direction, he thought as he cranked open the gate and let the gaggle of greenskins amble out of the city. He had no idea what they were playing at, but this was the 6th or possibly 7th group to leave the city through this gate in the last 2 days. The Tartars and Pilgrims had been bad enough, But greenskins were something else. Not only were they bad-mannered and broke, they also smelt unbelievable, particularly when they were overexcited. Another man would have been diverted by the sight of near on 100 greenskins leaving the city, each one a unique harbinger of chaos and lunacy. There were little ones, with monolithic noses poking out from beneath massive helmets, some of which, on closer inspection, had been made from a range of cooking utensils, including pans, kettles, and colanders. There were big ones with crooked teeth and dozens of knives, alchemical grenades, and all sorts of other weapons crisscrossing their bare torsos in bandoliers. There were orcs with back banners, front banners, side banners, strange leather masks, handbells, knee bells, and multicoloured top hats. There were trolls with wheelbarrows, or armed with tiny trebuchets, and a goblin waving a feathered tricorn from a sedan chair that was being carried by two bewildered children. One entire batch were lavishly adorned with all sorts of spoons, and singing. Greery didn't care. He just counted the heads and opened the gate. Grumpily he watched as this latest crowd moved off, the smell of lamp oil and sweat lingering as they passed. Then he cranked the gate shut and went back to the office. He had just scribbled the words, another dozen or so greenskins in the ledger, when his attention was caught by a movement. A pack of tiny, squeaky-type goblins that were hopping from foot to foot and pointing at the gate had materialized from somewhere. He cursed loudly, gazed longingly at his cold stewed tea, and went outside to see to the bastard.
Are you a new indie artist looking for a way to market yourself? Maybe it's time to go indie now. Go Indie Now is an online platform that highlights, fosters, and supports indie artists of all art forms. Our shows on YouTube do everything they can to bring an audience to what you're doing. So head on over to goindienow.com, find our channel on YouTube by searching Go Indie Now, all one word, and remember, it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you there.
We have a great author with us today. The author's pen name is Erin Michael Hall, and she has written a series called The Rise of Nazil, and I want to make sure I pronounce that right, but these are some great books, and she's got a lot of good things to tell us, but we'll get to that. But let me first introduce Erin Michael Hall. Erin, say hello.
Hello, thank you for having me, Tom. I'm very excited.
We're glad to have you on the show, and I want to we kind of just start out with just a little bit. What is it that made you want to become an author?
Well, I've always loved to write, and so I think that I've been writing from the beginning, and I call myself sort of an accidental author because I never planned on publishing anything that I wrote. But it wasn't until I started actually letting people read my first manuscript, which was for The Rise of Nazil, that people started prodding me in that direction. And it took a while, but I finally decided to, okay, well, maybe this is something that I should do because it's something I've always loved to do. I just never thought about publishing any of my work.
So what, did you do some research on what it would take to get published? Is there something that just made you decide to go the indie author route?
Well, yes, because, as I said, when I was writing The Rise of Nazil, the end product, I ended up with 500,000 words. Okay, and since I wasn't trying to get anything published, that was fine because it was a book that was just for me. But when I started considering publishing, then I started looking into what were the actual requirements. And, I think it was 120K was about the longest of a book that people wanted from new authors. And I didn't have that. And I did, even after I started getting it edited a couple of times professionally and doing it myself, I still got it down to about 350K. It was still too large. And of course, the thing that they tell you to do is to split them up into 3 to make a trilogy. And I didn't want to do that either because I wanted to give the reader an entire story and not split a book into 3 and sell it 3 times. But that's sort of a detriment because people like shorter books. So, but I went ahead and I knew it was going to be difficult. So I decided to self-publish because it was rejected because of length a couple of times, well, more than a couple. So I tried to edit it down again, and I started going through the process of publishing. So I didn't know anything. And I started learning and researching, and, finally, in August of 2015, I published my first novel.
That's pretty awesome. And as you was talking, I was thinking about, a lot authors that have to go through the traditional publishers, they end up having to change what they wrote to make the publisher satisfied. And the wonderful thing about being an indie author is we can do it our way.
Exactly. Exactly. I had received one offer, I forget, early on, but it was giving up so much control. And like you said, you have to do it their way. I mean, they are the gatekeepers, so you have to do what they want in order to get what you want. But I just couldn't accept that. So I just continued down the indie author path, and I've been satisfied with that. I like being able to write what I want, how I want. And some people love it, some people hate it, some people are on the fence, but that's with anything and with any author, no matter how popular or unpopular they are.
Doing the indie author way, and you get on Facebook, I know you're on Facebook and Twitter and other places, do you find the other authors out there, the indie community, do you find them helpful in helping you refine what you do?
There are many really great people out there, many great authors and whatnot. There are a lot of, you have to find the right place to be, and it'll take a while for you to figure out what groups or what communities you need to join, because there are a lot of, people out there that are hateful, and they make themselves feel better by belittling other authors, especially ones that are new and starting out. And it's sad, but that's reality. But there are a few that I just absolutely love. You're one of the ones that are always, you're always very inspiring and, trying to give good advice. And there are a few others that I just love to talk to all the time because they are trying to be helpful. They're authors. They know how difficult this is. And they're not trying to compound that with negativity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's arrogance is a bad thing no matter what you're doing.
It is so true. I was so shocked.
Yeah, it's amazing how many arrogant people there are out there, but still there are some good people, and that's what I found, just like you, by just taking my time and learning which groups are good and all that. You just find the right people, and it's quite a benefit. Exactly.
Well, and, going through the process. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's talk about your books. What you said you had written this thing? It was over 500,000 words. That's a big long story, and I think it's awesome. Kind of just give us a kind of a blurb or synopsis of what the entire series is about.
Oh my gosh. I can write 500,000 words with ease, but trying to sum them all up in a few sentences.
Just a little blurb like you'd put out there on Amazon or something to entice people to read it.
Well, it is, I guess, kind of classic epic fantasy. It's not really the good versus evil because I think that concept is, I don't know, it's too simple because inherently people are good and evil. So it's a struggle. The Nazilians have control over the land of Falundul, and they enslave the humans. And the conflict arises when the Zaxxon, which would be the Nazilian leader, was trying to exterminate the humans because he's already, I mean, they enslave them and, you know, they treat them horribly. But when he wanted to wage this war against the land, that's when certain Nazilians, such as Pentanamir, which is the first chosen, decided that he could not allow that to happen. He had to make a choice whether he was going to stand up and try to protect these people or he was going to follow absently. You know, these edicts put forth by his Zaxxon, who he was the first chosen of the elite Nazilian Guard. So he had to lead these troops. And there's conflict, a lot of conflict going on. The cast is large, but I think the inner struggle and all the elements that are coming together while this plot is brewing and what's going on with the humans in the different villages and cities and the inevitable war and everything that leads up to it. And we have the divine guardians that are awakened, who are supposed to be protectors of the land, but they've fallen into memory, like out of memory, so to speak, and have become nothing but myths and legends to the people of the land. But there are some, and they're calling out to them. And they cannot control any aspects of the coming conflict, but they can try to influence major players in this conflict. So you have this battle going on against these different gods, but I think the most substantial battle is fought within with characters like Pentanamir and the different people who are chosen to help him or decide not to. And then, of course, there's also humans that would rather serve the Nazilians than to help fight against them. So, I mean, you have all these treacheries in this betrayal, and Pentanamir is trying to stay true to his oath and his edicts, but he feels trapped by his heritage because it's always been in conflict with who he is. And there are other people, you know, other Nazilians, they're not all bad, so to speak, but they're afraid because they don't know what they can do. And they have families, and they don't want to endanger them because the Zaxxon is very quick to torture and abuse. And so it's, you know, that battle that's going on, there's no chosen one. There's a chosen guard, but that's the entire military guard, you know, but it's all these people trying to come together with their differences, with their different backgrounds, and try to do something for the common good of Phelan Dul. And will they make the right decisions? Well, they make a lot of wrong ones, and a lot of bad things happen to really good people, but that's life. So a lot of magical elements are brought in towards, you know, you have to get into the book to get to the more magical elements, because I'm not a big magic user in epic fantasy, and that's only because I think sometimes it's overused, and I don't think that a conflict should be solved with a use of magic and to end it. I think the struggle that the humans and the different species have to go through to solve it or resolve it or get through it, that's where the real magic is, in the characterization and the plot.
It sounds like you put a lot of emphasis on the character development.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're interconnected, and I mean, the plot is multi-layered. There's so much in there. It was hard to strip parts away, but my verbosity, I'm getting it in check. But I think it is a compelling story, and the people who have read it and give me the feedback on it, they love it. And I'm, of course, there's always those who don't. Well, that was a little, because there's torture that's in there, and a couple of bad things. I'm like, well, there is reality in there. So these are things that happened in our own histories that are happening still to this day. And I'm not afraid to bring that into the narrative because it's real, and every good fantasy is based in reality. Mm-hmm. So we just introduce that, in these fantastical ways with these new worlds and these new species, but it's still, you have to have that realism for people to really connect.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this really sounds interesting. And I was looking on your site, and you've got some videos on your Amazon author page. We'll have a link to that on our episode page. But one of the things you've done is created a new language, which I thought was really awesome. And it's called Melanie? Is that correct?
Melanie, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this language and what prompted you to come up with it.
Well, I guess because, one thing I've always done is my siblings and I, we used to entertain each other, and we had our own language, different words and, stuff that we used to speak that only we understood when we were growing up. And it just developed from that. But, with the fantastical worlds and whatnot and new species, it just seemed right that there should be a language to go along with that because we're in the 75th year of Alberoth, and then we go into, the year of Calderon. And if we have all of these different things, these different elements, then there has to be a language that was there before time was time, to me. Mm-hmm. So that would be the Melonai language of the Guardians. And not many people even speak the language anymore, but it comes back throughout the book and, the entire series. And it just kept developing. It was very easy because I couldn't bring in these ancient beings and, have them just speak English. It just didn't seem, it didn't seem real enough to me. So, I started just creating words, and I didn't have any basis for it in the beginning, but I always, I spoke Amharic, which I love. And I loved, the rougher sounds in Arabic. And of course Latin and different things, and even Klingon, believe it or not. And so I was kind of drawing on that as the language developed because I wanted it to be, some of it to be kind of rough because of the people who were speaking it. But at the same time, I wanted it to be melodic because the Guardians are, these divine beings and, the way they speak and the way they, interact, it's soothing. So when they're speaking the language, it comes out, it's supposed to be soothing and have this effect on those who are hearing it. So it was just, I don't know, it was very natural, and it's still developing. I'm still adding words as I have to communicate. I don't want it to be too large, but just large enough to be a complete language in itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, as your fan base grows, just like with Star Trek, and you brought up Klingons, there's Star Trek fans, they run around speaking Klingon and Ferengi and everything else. And people that read Tolkien, they'll speak in the Elven language. So you're going to have your fan base all running around speaking Melonai.
Well, that would be interesting because my son does speak, a little bit of it, and which is always funny to hear. Like, you're learning.
Yeah. Speaking of your son, I understand that your third book in the series, the final book in the trilogy, Piercing the Darkness, we have a nice cover there of a young, I guess he's one of the Nazil.
He's half human, half Nazil.
Half human, half Nazil. And I understand you used your son kind of as a model to create that image. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. I have three fabulous illustrators, and Upet is the one who did that one. And he was remarkable because this character is so integral to that book that, I fell in love with him, and I wanted his image to be, just as fantastic to me. So I asked him if I could give him 3 pictures of my son, and he could age progress those photos into what he would look like at 17. And it's phenomenal because when people see him, and then they'll see, like the banner, like at this last convention that I was at, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's him!" I'm like, "Yeah, that's him," because it looks so much like him. And when he gets that age, I'm going to take a picture of him next to that banner. It's fantastic. He's amazing. He's working on some things for me now. Very busy, but extremely worth the wait.
How does your son like being the model for a book cover?
Oh my gosh, he absolutely loves it. I had to get another banner to put in his room, and he tells his friends, "That's me, that's me." They're like, "No, it's not." They're like, "Oh, yes, it is." So he's thrilled, just thrilled. But he's like, "I'm Hermes, that's me." I said, "Yes, you're Hermes. You are that character."
No, but that's awesome for him. I've seen your setup that you use at these conventions, and it's pretty astounding. You've got some nice big full-size banners and characters and beautiful table and everything, and it just so eye-catching. How did it take you a long time to build that up, or how did you go about that?
No, I mean, it actually didn't. I kind of visualized what I wanted, and I just worked toward that. I think that, my long history of being an event organizer helped with that. I just saw what I wanted, and I went about creating that. So I, started researching on the best places to get this and that. And I've only been at one event last year where I was able to set up almost everything because I had gotten 2 tables. Mm-hmm. But I try to, I have to switch out the banners and the different things, and I update the tablecloth every year. And I was, happy with the way it turned out. Even, in the smaller spaces, still I was able to get up quite a bit of stuff. And it draws a lot of attention, and people like to take pictures with the characters. And I love that. I love that because I love all the illustrations, and anyone who wants to take a picture with me, you come on over here and I'll take that picture for you.
So lots of selfies, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's fine. My giant Aranac, that's the big winner usually. So I usually keep him off to the side so I can, move him off so people can take a picture right with him. I'm getting some cutouts made to make that easier. So I'll have those available probably in July. So with the most popular characters.
Oh, that's really cool. Like I said, I've seen your setup, seen some pictures of that, and it makes me very envious to have something like that.
Just wait till you start setting up for these conventions. Yours are going to be fabulous.
I'm working on it. Speaking of conventions, you've got some coming up this year, do you not?
Oh my gosh, I have so many to do this year. Yes.
Which will be the next one? Maybe somebody will say something in late April or early May.
Yes, I try to keep it updated on my my Facebook and my website.
Okay.
But there's Jordan Con, there's MonoCon, there is Wholanta, Outlanta, Treklanta. Of course, I'll be doing Dragon Con, and oh my gosh, there are so many. I should have seen. I wasn't prepared. I should have had that.
Sounds like Atlanta has quite a few of them.
They have so many, and that's why, I have the bigger ones that I know by memory, but there's also some smaller ones, but the sales are not small. So, yeah. And the networking is phenomenal. So, I'll be doing those too, off and on, and some of those are one-day events, and some are 2, and I'll be traveling all around. And I was supposed to do Archon 41 this year again, and I don't know if I'm going to make it because that's in Collinsville, Illinois, and that's a really good one. And I usually do that one every year. So we'll see. I have a table reserved, but we'll see if I can make it up there.
It sounds like these are really the best way to get your books sold, or just to let people know that you're there, is go to these live events where they actually get to meet you rather than just see your books on someplace online.
Absolutely. Being able to actually talk and interact with people. And I always do much better at different conventions and the expos and whatnot. And I love it. I love it. I did one in February, and the gentleman came back to the next place that I was going to be at the expo, the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Expo in DeKalb. And he wanted to get more of the books, but he said I didn't want to order them online because I saw that you're going to be here. So I came back, and my wife wanted to know if you also had romance. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. Hi, Charles. That's his name. I said, well, yes. I have the Rights of Aragon. I said, that's a sci-fi romance. And So he got a couple of other books. I took some pictures with him, and he's great. And he said he'll be at my next event. So I love
Cool.
that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've got some stuff still in the works in progress I'm seeing here that are coming out this year, according to what you have. Blood of Oisin? Oisin?
Yes. Blood of Oisin. That is the next in the epic fantasy series. It is another trilogy, but it picks up where Piercing the Darkness leaves off. So, I mean, that is already written. That complete trilogy has been finished. It just needs to go through 2 rounds of professional edits, and it's ready to go.
Okay. So that's continuing in the same world as your Rise of Nazil.
Right. I ended that story, so it's not like that if you read Piercing the Darkness, but the same characters, it just goes on from there.
Okay.
So, and we took that.
And another one I'm showing, a fantasy romance, Rights of Erdron.
Yes. Rights of Erdron is a sci-fi romance duology, and that released in February. The first book, Rights of Erdron. The second one, it's finished also, and that will release in August. But the audiobook for Rights of Erdron releases next month. So I'm extremely excited because this is my first audiobook. This is the first book that I have written that was short enough to be affordable to make an audiobook. So, I was very pleased when the one person in the world that I wanted to do this could take on the narration for Rights of Erdron. Oh my gosh, when this comes out, it's phenomenal. He's just amazing. I love Victor Devine, and people who have read anything with the Drift series knows who Victor Devine is, and he is phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people probably think it's pretty easy to do an audiobook. Somebody just sits there and reads, but I've been through that process too, and there's a whole lot more to it than that.
Absolutely. People are like, well, why don't you do it? I said, because I can't. I can read an excerpt of my book, but that takes a special talent to be able to do that, and, special equipment if you want it done right, and, the studio. So, I'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot, and you got to have the right voice. I mean, I can read my books too, but the way I pronounce things probably ain't the way other people would pronounce them. And with this deep Oklahoma accent of mine, it probably wouldn't sound as good to the people in the north. So, but finding a good voice is one of the keys, I think, for getting a good audiobook.
Right, and not only that, I mean, the reason that I wanted him, and it was a blessing, because he responded almost immediately and said, oh, yeah, I can do it. And some things came up in his schedule, and I knew they would because he's extremely busy. So we kind of delayed it a little bit. But it's the emotion that is brought forth also, and actually getting into the characterization. And that's why, Victor was so important to me, because I've always enjoyed his narration and the way he can make you feel what the characters feel. And I just can't wait till it releases, because it's fantastic.
It's always exciting when you get your books in paperback and get you to physically hold them, but then an audiobook is just something totally new. That was a whole new experience.
Yes, it is. I mean, I always listen to my manuscripts, and but it's different because the software that I use, it reads everything well, but there's no emotion in it.
Yeah.
So when you have that and you can feel it, and it just grabs you and pulls you even deeper into the narrative, oh gosh,
yeah,
it's wonderful.
You need to be more than just somebody who can read. You got to be a voice actor.
Exactly.
Why don't you give us a little sample of this language? I know you've got it on your videos, and I will have links to all that, but I just like the people that I just, when I first heard you speaking this, I just fell in love with this language. So I'd like people to hear a little bit of it. So could you give us a little sample?
Let's see. oh, okay, let's say, Atarax Romadechokwe. I can say that. And of course, if I wanted to thank you, I would say, Batama Maleko. I don't know what else to say.
It makes me think of the movie Avatar, where they had the language for the blue people. I forgot what they were called,
and,
but the creator had created a language for that, but nobody had ever pronounced it before, and he just told the actress Zoe to just you say it, and everybody else will say it the way you do. So, however she pronounced those words, that's how it came out, and it was really awesome.
Interesting. Okay. See, I did not know that.
So anyway, that's what I think of when I hear you speaking this language, and it just reminds me of Tolkien and his Elven language. Just that adds such a kind of realism to the story that you just don't get otherwise, and I thought that was really awesome.
Well, I wanted to let people know that, what it sounded like too, and, that it was a spoken language. And so that's why I kind of went through, and everywhere in the book that it is spoken, I recorded it. Mm-hmm. And I've uploaded a lot of it to my website. So you can go through and, it's categorized by page number, and you can follow along and you can hear what it would sound like if they were speaking this. And of course, when the Thessalonians, these giant, huge men, are speaking this, their language is a little bit rougher than it is when the Guardians, are speaking. And I love it. I love it. And not just because it's mine, but because I love language.
Yeah, well, I think a good fantasy fan will like language too. So that was pretty awesome. Okay. All right, we're going to run out of time here. So do you have any words any words of advice for people aspiring to become an indie author, or who think they want to write but haven't really gotten down to it yet?
Well, keep going and always be true to you and that voice. Write what you feel, write what's in your heart, because a lot of people are so quick to critique and judge someone else's creativity, but that's individual to each of us. So, you can't really, it's one thing to have proofreaders and betas and editors. That's different. They help to make it better. But you have to be true to who you are and write what you want, and not listen to these naysayers that are saying no one is going to want that, no one's going to want this. How many other people have heard that and did it anyway and were very successful doing it? So as long as you stay true to who you are and you keep going, and, don't let the negaholics get you down, these negative people, and even these other authors that will place themselves above you because you're new. You know the story that you have, and you're the only one that can bring that forth. So you need to do that. And, go ahead, and then after that, go and have it edited and, proofread and taken care of, but stay true to your concept and what story lies within your heart.
Very good advice. I agree with that. All right. Well, we've run out of time, and we're going to end the show now. And I would just want to end this interview, and I just want to thank you for being with us. We've had Erin Michael Hall with us, and she has her series, The Rise of Nazil. I encourage you to check the links out on our episode page, where you'll find links to her author pages and her books and samples of that language. Check it out. You really like it. Thank you for being with us, Erin.
Thank you. Batama Maleko.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening. Be sure to check in next week for another great episode of Right On with Tom Fallwell.